Today we are going to learn how to trace an image using the Photoshop application. You'll notice on the desktop an image of Grant Wood's painting, American Gothic. To begin the project, the first thing I want to do is I want to enlarge it on my screen so I can see the image best. So to enlarge it, I can go over to View, and I can hit Fit on Screen, or I can type in the key command, Command 0. You'll notice it maximizes itself on my screen. Now what I need to do for me to set up tracing it, I want to put my name on the file. So I'm going to go over and I'm going to do Save As, and I'm going to make sure I can put my name on the file. Now in this situation, my name was on the file to begin with, but if your name isn't on your file, this is your opportunity to put your name on here. I'll retype my name, and so you can see, and then decide where you're going to place it. You may be putting it in your folder. I happen to be placing mine on the desktop right now, and I'll be hitting Save, and it would save. Okay? So that's how you begin the project. The following is a way that I developed to trace an image in the application Photoshop. So we can use this technique to trace any image, but today we'll be using this image by Grant Wood of American Gothic, probably the most famous, single most famous American painting. So what we're going to do is we're going to be adding some layers to the image so we can trace on separate layers, and also so we can see our tracing clearly. So we're going to go over to where it says Layers over here on the right, and you'll notice in the upper right corner there's a little section that when you click on it, it says New Layer. There's also a key command, which is Shift-Command-N. So you can type in Shift-Command-N, or you can click on that, or you can go up to the top here where on the menu bar and go across the top, and you see it says Layer New, and you can make a new layer. And they also tell you the key command here as well. So using any of those options, we're going to create a new layer, and we're going to give this layer a name. So let's call this the tracing layer, and so we'll do that, and we're going to trace on this layer, and you'll see it appears here in the layers palette, the tracing layer. Now if I were to begin to trace right now with a pencil, and I were to set my pencil at like something thin right now, like a 3 on my brush, and I wanted to trace, I'm going to do one line. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to come down, and if I wanted to see that line, I would shut it off, and I could see the line on the screen. But if I wanted to see it with more clarity, one of the things that I could do is, and I like to do, and I suggest that we do, is we put another layer on the page. So I want to create a new layer. Like right now, the tracing layer is active. That's where we were drawing. Only active on that layer. If I wanted to create a new layer again, then I would have hit either Shift-Command-N, Shift-Command-N. I would create a new layer. If I did that while the tracing layer were active, it would put the layer on top of the tracing layer. If I was active on the background layer, and I did the same thing, and I went over and I said Layer, New Layer, it would put it on top of the background. I want it to be on top of the background. But either way, I could rearrange the layers quite simply by just moving them up and down. So I'm going to call this the white paper, because I'm going to imagine that this is a virtual, not imagine, this is a virtual piece of white paper. So here we have white paper, and I'm going to actually fill that with the color white. So I can do that one of two ways. I can go to Edit, and then I could go to Fill, and I can go where it says Use. I could tell it to use the color white, hit OK, and that fills the page. Now you'll notice you can see the lines that I had drawn earlier. If I shut it off, I can see the image. If I want to trace, I want to be active on the trace layer. I can shut off the white paper, and I can continue to trace. So here I will take and I will click on the areas that I want to trace, and I can begin tracing. So it's that simple to set up your page for tracing. And when I want to see what I've done, I can simply turn on the white paper and see it. Now don't make the mistake and click on the white paper, because if you do that, you will make it active and you won't be drawing on the right layer. So make sure you're tracing on the trace layer, and just to view the white layer, you turn it on, but you don't even have to make it active. Active is when it actually is clicked on and it changes to the active color. Here it's light blue. Now the tracing layer. So I can turn this on and off. The second way to fill the white paper with the white background color would have been to use the paint bucket, select the foreground color, maybe it's to a white, and then we'd take and we'd fill it in. And that would be the second way to fill the white paper page, or that background color, with white. Next, we will discuss how to trace the image using the paintbrush. Click on the paintbrush, make it active. Now, underneath the paintbrush is a pencil. You can do this project with a pencil, but I find the pencil to be more pixelated, so personal preference, we'll use a paintbrush. I'm going to check up at the brushes, and you'll notice there's diameter up at the top, and the diameter can increase. I'm using a number 3 pixel, and the hardness means that it's a hard edge brush. If I were to move it down, it would be a fuzzy, soft edged brush. But for this, we may want to make some defined lines. We want a hard edge brush, and we'll begin like this. Now, the basic idea of tracing is pretty simple, but if you just try to use the mouse and try to control it through the air, you might have some difficulty. And by the way, I just reversed my last step by hitting Command Z. If you go to the top, it says Edit, and you'll notice it says Step Backward. Redo Brush, Command Z. And if you wanted to do Step Backward, you could do Option, Command Z. But that lets you go a step backward. So if I make a line, I don't like it, I go Edit, and I say Undo Brush, Command Z. Reverse is your last step. So let's talk about how to trace with the image. To make a straight line, if I try to just make a straight line with my mouse, it's not so easy. But if I hit the mouse, and then I hit the Shift key, I will make a perfectly straight line. And that works both horizontally, and it also works vertically. So those are some options on how to draw vertical lines. If I'm doing lines that look like this, I'll make vertical lines and I'll just trace like that. Another option is, if you're going to do diagonals, you click with your mouse. I'm going to start here. I hit the Shift key, go to the other side, I click, and it follows me in a straight line to that next spot. So here's my next spot. I hit Shift, it'll follow me. If I want to start something new, don't hit Shift. Go to a new location. Let's say on the right side here, press, hit the Shift key, and it'll follow me. Then if I just wanted to roll across, hit the Shift key and just roll across. Click here and roll across. So that's how you can make very nice straight lines. Now, all of the lines that we use are not going to be straight. Many of them are going to be round, curvilinear, and organic. Those will take more precision with the hand. But we can use some of the same ideas to make our lines seem a little bit clearer. But here's a good, very, very important tip, and I hope you listen to it, is that whenever you're going to work on detailed areas, I highly, highly recommend that you zoom into the picture. Now we can zoom in a variety of different ways. You'll notice over here on the right where my mouse is dancing, it's the navigator. I can zoom into the picture by zooming in with the navigator. Then I can adjust it and put things in place. I can also take the zoom tool on the left side of the page and I can click on the picture or drag over a section to expand it to that size. So those are options on how to zoom into your picture. Grab my brush tool. Now, it's much easier for me to try to make this wrong color. For me to try to make this stroke here that I'm making with the brush, it's a lot easier for me to do when I zoom in than if I did it while zooming out. I'll do the other side while zooming out. And when we come in, we'll notice that there might be just little bits of differences in how it looks. Let's turn on the white paper. You'll notice how the one I zoomed in is rounder and more controlled. It's easier to do that when you're zoomed in. So trust me, take my advice, and don't be afraid to zoom in. It gives you more accuracy. For even more accuracy, let me show you another tip. I'll use the eraser. I'll erase out that line we had. And let's redo it, okay? But this time we'll redo it using the brush and using the Shift key so I can more accurately follow the line I'm trying to trace. So I'll click on it, and like we did before when we wanted to make the straight lines, I can just move in small increments that are very controlled. If you're someone who has difficulty making smooth flowing gestures, make very short gestures and click and it will follow you. Now if you make quick fast ones, it'll look choppy. But if you take your time, you'll get a very clean line. So you'll see the one that I zoomed in on and I used the Shift key is probably even tighter than the one that was free flowing. But most likely when I work, I probably do a combination of both. As you continue to trace, you might consider varying the thicknesses of your lines. So, for example, right now we've been using all the same thickness lines, but you can accent certain things, make them appear more important or closer to the viewer, or thicker to the viewer by changing the thickness. So if I were doing, let's say, the contour of the gentleman's jacket, I might make it a little bit bigger. I might go to a 5. So as I go around the edge of the figure, I'm going to get this thicker contour, and you'll recognize that he's probably a little bit closer to the foreground than he is to the background. Now you're going to have to use your own judgments when you do this. When you're working with the, let's say, the thin lines, we can go over here to where the building is, and I'll keep my lines in the same area, and we go down. I might want to make these just a little bit thinner because they're going to give it just a different feel. So these lines here, a little bit thinner, a little thicker. And of course, you know, we can always go in with our eraser and clean up any mistakes that we make to keep our work nice and accurate. Here, I probably want to use a block eraser, so I'm not dealing with that round part. Perfect. And so you need to continue to develop the work. And now it just requires patience and some commitment to completing the project. So as you diligently continue to work on your tracing, you'll find that it'll start to develop rather quickly. But continue to work, and spend time on the details, you will reward yourself by your end result. I'd like to talk about some common areas that I find my students have difficulty with. Starting with the noses. So I'm going to zoom in and we'll start working with the noses. We'll start with the lady on the left. So here I'm going to zoom in all the way into her face, and I'm going to make sure I'm working on the trace layer, and I'm going to begin to trace her face. Now, one of the things that happens is, for some reason, students want to draw lines on both sides of the nose, when in fact there isn't really a line on either side of the nose. There is shadow, and sometimes the shadow creates a line, and so there it's appropriate to make a line. So I'll begin here. Remember, I really recommend zooming in. Now, as you do it, you can then check your line. If you like what you see, you'll hold on to it. If you don't like what you see, it's okay to reverse it. Hit Command Z, erase it away. Whatever you need to do to correct it before you continue to develop the image. If you realize something isn't good, erase it. Start over. So we'll start with one line. On this side of the nose, we have this, and I'm going to come softly under. I can then do the nostril. And notice I'm not trying to do everything in one motion. Like, I don't want to go all the way around. I'm going to take my time. I can do short little spaces. Much better to do it that way. And of course, zoom in more when appropriate. Now, that's too much for me. It's too pixelated to see. But let's see. About here, it's pretty good. So I'll just come in, and now here I'm going to use the shift keys. A little arch coming. And I'm going to tap away slowly in the arch. I'm not going to do it too abruptly, but I'll follow the line. And this way I'll get a nice arch. Start the line anew here. And I can just follow the dark pixels and let it follow back. And I'll get as close a tracing as possible. So now when I turn this on, the white paper, and we pull back, you can see how the tracing starts to look pretty accurate. So really zoom in while you develop this, and you'll really appreciate where it goes. So we'll continue to work on the development of the face. Again, we'll zoom in, and that'll be the best way to develop it. Here I'm using a brush that's a number 2. I think the lines here should be a little bit thinner than it is in some of the areas, most of the areas where we use 3s. So let's try this, and let's take a look. Yeah, that looks okay. And some more, as also we can use in here 1s as well. So we can vary the line as we develop the piece and see where it's most appropriate to see what type of line to use. And notice I'm going through the area slowly. I'm clicking, I'm using the shift key, so I make very deliberate marks. And it's okay to have lines that don't continue if you don't think you're going to need them as borders. So here we go, let's see. So we're developing that nicely. And where you recognize here I need some value, go on in and darken the space. We're going to take some time now to develop her lips, because that's another area that students often get intimidated by. So again, you know I like to zoom in, and I'll just take, and again I'll be clicking the shift key as I go along to get the shape of her lips. And here we go, gently. And Just try to follow the lines. Sometimes you can't see them well. Do your best in those situations. No reason to panic. It's only a picture. I gotta go backwards there. I don't like the direction it was going. I want to follow. Nope. I want to follow that line. Nope. It's going not where I want. There we go. And let's see what that looks like. Yep, I'll pull it all the way across. And that looks pretty darn good. With lots of hard work and perseverance, you'll develop a great outline of your American Gothic image. Good luck, work hard.